So let me just start by saying that I have planned today's session to be interactive, and I'm hoping if the technology that I've put together works for me, that those of you who are attending online will still be able to interact with the session today. So I've tried to create some online interaction for you guys, and then obviously for the people in the room, we've gone back to old school, so we have flip chart papers, post-its and pens. So I guess I'm not going to be doing a lot of the talking today. Most of it is going to be over to you to talk about what you would like to see in terms of a review of the UUK Code of Practice going forward. So after the introductions are over, I'll move on to just do some online questions. So those of you in the room will need your phones or a laptop or a device for that bit. So just to ask you to get those ready. And those of you at home can use your phones or your computer that you might be on watching this, and you should be able to interact with the online questions. Then really I've split the session into two parts. So the first part is about your ideas for changes to the code as it currently stands. So if we're moving forward with the code in the sections that we have, with the things that we have in it, what things would you like to change? What practical changes would you like to make to the code? Which bits annoy you? Which bits would you like removing, for example? And then the second part of the interactive exercises today is about maybe new areas of the code, so things that haven't existed in the code in the past that you would like to see adding, or maybe expansions or additions to the code. So there are some areas that are very short that you may want to expand on, and areas that you just think need a lot more information in there. So that's how I'm planning to split up the session today. We will be finished by 3:30, and then we'll move on to the closing session after that. And I will try and get some feedback from you at the end. Trudy is in the room. Trudy is the administrator of the code, and Trudy has kindly offered with me to look at taking photographs of everything we create in the room, getting the information from the online feedback sessions, and hopefully collating that into the next stage. But let me say a few words first before we get started about the reason that we're here today, and that's about reviewing the UUK code. So I think I'm right to say, and those of you in the room who were there at the time may correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the code was first drafted in 2006, so it has been around for some time now. I'm relatively new to the code, so only in the last sort of 8 years. The last review to the code took place, I actually think it took place before 2019. The website says it's the 2019 code, but because of the amount of time it takes from starting a review process to having it signed off by the government and the minister at the end of that process, it could have taken longer than that, but I think it was approved in 2019 and published on our website. I think the thing that we would like to say from a code point of view is that we think consultation is key. So getting information from our members about what you find works from the code and what you would like to see. And I think picking up on something that somebody said in a session earlier, I think it was Mark's session that I attended earlier, somebody was saying about the code aspiring to raise standards, not just providing minimum expectations of standards. So I think this is a really good opportunity, and consultation with you guys will tell us what it is that we can do to improve and sort of enhance those expectations. This is the first opportunity to feed into this review. In fact, the review hasn't really started yet. This is day one of starting us reviewing the code, so it's a really good opportunity for you to get your ideas in, because there's nothing already in train that you would need to bring back or we would need to change. So this is a great start to a process, and we think your feedback is vital. So this isn't the only opportunity to do this. You are the experts, you're the people probably dealing with the code every day, and we want to make sure we include that when we review this code today. So let's make a start and do something a little more interactive, hopefully. So those of you in the room who have your phones, if you go to the website menti.com, hopefully that QR code may work if you can get your camera out and check it. So when you get to menti.com, you should see that picture in the bottom left of the screen, and you should be able to submit a code, and the code is up there, 66478290. Those of you checking in online, hopefully you can all do the same. I'll just give you a couple of minutes to get that working. If you use the QR code, it should take you straight there without having to enter a code. Are people making that work at the moment? And I'm going to ask my friend in the AV department to move us on to the Mentimeter Thank you very much for that. That's fantastic. So yes, next slide on that one, please. That would be great. So I'm hoping that on your phones you can now see this. A question. Can everyone see that question? Yeah. Excellent. So if you could start to populate that. So the question is, do you work with the code in your role? For example, do you contribute to the audit prep or carry out duties which align with the code, or anything really that you think means you work with the code in your role at the moment?
Mine's not moved on.
Oh, I think it will move on once we get to the next section. Is that right? Oh, it hasn't.
It hasn't moved on. I'm still on the first screen.
Oh, has everybody else managed to get it to move on? It might just take a little while with the internet.
Press it.
Oh, we've got quite a lot of votes. That's excellent. 31 people have already voted. So that's really helpful for me, actually, in terms of being able to do the rest of this session today, knowing that 29 of you who are with us at the moment are working with the code regularly. Don't worry too much if you're one of the 2 people who are not working with the code regularly. You may have less to contribute in this particular session, but I think you will still find it useful. I don't work really closely with the code operationally. I have some colleagues in the room here who are particularly asked to come along today, Emma and Robin, because if you ask me any very specific questions about the code, I won't know the answer. I don't know what order it all comes in and what is under 2B.153. But I have colleagues around me who probably do, and I actually do have some copies of the code here if we need them as we go through the process today. Okay, we'll move on to the next one, please. And hopefully there'll be another question. So how long have you been working with the code? Oh. Some new people, 1 person less than a year. Wow, there's quite a few there. 4 people so far ever since it was established in 2006. That's fantastic. I can see the votes are still coming through. Is yours working now, Robin? Or is you? Excellent. That's great to see. So the vast majority of people have worked with the code for the last 3 to 5 years, but actually still some who've been here a long time and some who are quite new to it. So that's a really nice, nice range of people. Great, we'll move on to the next one, please. So these questions are rated on a scale of 1 to 7. 7 meaning strongly agree, 1 meaning strongly disagree. And you just need to read the statement. So is the code helpful to you in your role? Without the code and the audits, it will be difficult to maintain standards in university accommodation, and the code needs to be updated to reflect university accommodation in 2022. And it's nice to see some high scores on these 3, because really that is the purpose of us being here today. We would hope that the code is helpful to people and that we have a reason to need to update it. I think the middle question is a little bit of a red herring. I suppose what I mean by that is, does the code drive up standards, or would universities keep standards high without the code due to things like the student experience, not wanting to receive complaints? So not necessarily needing anyone to comment on that, but I think hopefully it does help in some ways. That's great, thanks, and we'll move on to the next question. I think there is one more. There's 2. So which of these areas of the code do you think are most important to students in university accommodation in 2022? And I hope you're able to rate them 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th. This one may take a little bit more time to put in on your device. And the bit about students is important in this question. There is a next question which is more about staff, I think, or something else. But yeah, it's what do you think students, most important to students in 2022? It's an interesting one because I think, obviously, I put 4 things that could all be important, but interesting to know how you would rank them. I think, yes, I think that would probably have been my ranking of it. I think it is very difficult to be able to pick between those ones. It looks like everybody's responded. Thank you. We'll move on to the next one. So this is more about your own institutions, if you know the answer to this, and if you, just a gut feeling, but which of these areas do you think your students are the most satisfied with in your particular accommodation that you work with? Oh, that's nice to see. High-speed internet connection. Good to see mental health and wellbeing support coming through strongly too. Give people another few seconds just to finish. Which is actually a very similar, I think. Was that the same response as we just got? Yeah. So good to know that actually your students are probably satisfied with things in the order that they may rank them in order of importance. Fantastic, thank you. That's great. Well, that's given me a really good idea of who you all are and how long you've worked with the code. I'm realising that I'm not even sure that I introduced myself at the start of this session. I am Faye Sherrington. I'm Director of Student Services at Edge Hill University. It was when I saw the mental health and wellbeing support, I was about to say, obviously, that's really important to me. Working in student services, one of the key areas that I work with, which made me realise I hadn't introduced myself at the start. The other role I play is a voluntary role as the chair of the sector advisory group for the UUK code, and therefore will be leading on this project to review the code at the moment. So I think that was the last question on Mentimeter, and hopefully our, we can move back to the slides and start our first exercise. Yes, so I can move that slide on, thank you. Excellent, so for those of you who are listening at home, I will come back to you in a moment because there is an interactive exercise that I would like you to do, which is very similar to this, but we're going to use the Mentimeter online to be able to deliver that. But I'll explain all of that to you after I have explained what we're doing in the room at the moment. So for those people who are in the room, there is a range of areas of the code up on flip chart paper along the wall in the room. They are the 12, I think, areas of the code. It confused me because we have a 2, a 2A, a 2B, a 2C, and a 2D. So although there are only 8 areas, there are actually 12 pieces of flip chart paper. One of the things I would like you to do is to have a look at the code. And for those of you who are not really familiar with it, there should be enough copies to go around at the front here. Have a look at the code and look for the specifics in the code. So this is the existing code, not necessarily enhancements or new areas, because that will come next. But in the existing code, what is it about that code that really frustrates you? Where are the bits that you'd like to get changed? Have a look in the code, write it down, come and collect a post-it note, a book of post-it notes from the front, write down the area of the code and a bit of a description. Use a few if you need it to be able to describe it in full, and then stick it on the area. My thinking is hopefully everybody can get up and move around. If anybody needs any support to do that, happy to get others to help to stick things in the right place. But the idea being that you might be prompted or see things that other people have written that you can then go and get some ideas and put some new ones on there. Does that make sense? Thank you, excellent. So we're going to have about 10-15 minutes to do that, see how you get on. And I will move on to tell the people at home or at work how they can join in. So I'll let you guys come and start that process. And I will ask my colleague in the AV area to move on to the second section of the Mentimeter. You're all right. For me. Okay, so those of you who are at home, I'm just going to move up here out of your way. Those of you who are at home, hopefully you are able to look at the code online if you don't know it that well. So I have put the web address for the code up on the left-hand side of this screen. It's not a link, unfortunately. I couldn't get it to actually connect as a link. But hopefully you can type that into your browser, get hold of the QBO website, the accommodation code of practice. There is a small link there for typing in if you're struggling with that. And hopefully you can identify an area of the code you would wish to change in the same way I've just described. So looking at the code, the very specifics of the code, the things that you would like to change, and hopefully as you type into Mentimeter, it should anonymously, so don't worry, we're not going to know who said what. It will be anonymous, but it should start to scroll on the screen in front of us here in the room. So if you can have a look in the code and suggest any areas for change, that would be very useful. Thank you very much. And obviously, I think Jess is here. So if you're having any problems using this system, or please do put something in the Q&A, and we should be able to help you with that. Oh, thanks, you're all diligently doing the task. Jess, are you able to put anything in the chat for them?
I can do.
Just,
The codes.
yeah, so this, for those who are at home, this is actually a different Menti code.
Okay.
So you do need to go back to menti.com and use a new code, 58786281. Sorry, I should have explained that at the start. Thanks, Jess.
See, for me, there's bits where it says students must be given clear advice. So that's under health and safety. And then there'll be something else further on where it'll say students must be given clear advice, and it'll be another section. And I think if we had
Put that all
if
together.
we just had information students must be given,
This is it.
and this is, you know, and then a list of it.
Really good idea. That might be captured on there instead. Yeah, do. Definitely. I was going to say there's flip chart pens if you want one of these. We can find which ones they all are, can't we? Got no engagement online, which suggests that something's gone wrong. It's good, isn't it?
I know, I'm going to steal that.
Oh, yeah, it's worked. Thank you very much to the one person online who has managed to submit something. We are very pleased, thank you. As you can see, I was testing, it was definitely working, but it's nice to see that. Reduced planned maintenance notification time from 7 days to 4. That's a really good raising of standards option.
So when we did the last review, and I'm talking about the 2009 review, when we kind of reworded
Proper review, yeah.
Well, when we had to reword it because of the challenges with auditors.
Yeah.
I think we just did a full day at Working House where we had people around tables and each table did 2 or 3 areas of the code and thrashed it out and stuff.
Yeah. Thanks, Andy.
I don't think it's kind of like how far do we go into this consultation, so it's kind of do we do something that
Yeah.
is kind of we ask people to send in just anything and
We consider it.
as a group sort it out.
Yeah. It's a good idea.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just speaking out loud.
Great idea. Someone's gone off piste.
Probably too late, isn't it? No, but I suppose we actually have to think about what is the actual
Timeline.
timescale?
Yeah.
Timeline.
I think we are.
Yeah, just tell
Oh
them to
no.
bug out.
No, not at all.
No, no.
But no, Faye's got it all in hand in terms of the prioritisation as well of the different projects. So she's going to tell us what we're doing, and then she's going to tell you it's all in hand.
Yeah,
Everything's
that's fine.
fine.
Good.
Don't need to worry. Yeah.
No, don't worry.
Aren't you, Faye?
Yeah, I certainly am. That's exactly
So
what
we
I'm
need a
going to do.
conversation with William then about flagging this up in government in terms of time, because as you said, it can take
A long time.
yeah. I think well it took
Yeah.
a year. I think.
Did it? Yeah.
And I was just thinking in there like you know, do a lot on our show and that's it. You then have like maybe 10 questions at the end of it. If you get there and you get a certificate. So something to yeah, just to validate the training.
I also think the
Very much similar to people on the planet, or you know, what have you got in place?
I think
That
then
gives that assurance that
it's been done.
it's been done.
There's also a level on top of this, which are the stuff that I do. It's not really like this. Stuff I do is like, okay, but now you need to do this in a certain period of time. That's the operating.
Yeah, the management
Yeah,
actions.
yeah, absolutely.
I think they need to do activity.
How are people doing, and how much longer do you think people will need? I know it's hard, isn't it? 'Cause
Another 4 hours.
yeah, well, it's so true, isn't it? I'll give people a couple more minutes.
Per section.
yeah. Could go on forever, couldn't we? You might want to go home before then.
No, it went to SAG, and it was very much, it's got to be the organisation's policy, as long as they're, because every organisation does it differently.
Yeah. This is great fun.
It's good,
I've
isn't
not
it?
seen that. I've used Slido.
Oh, I've not tried that. Oh. This
I've
was
not used Menti. I like it a lot.
Amoshi conferences have used this before, so
Right.
this is my first proper go at it, so
Working very well.
that's going all right. I'll give everyone another minute, so just finish up the one you're doing, and then we will restart. Not at all. Excellent, that's useful.
Yeah, so I've got the first one, not the I'll presumably be able
Yeah, I'll be able to get those, yeah. Right, I think I'll restart. You're all right? Okay, well, thank you ever so much for your contributions in the room. I can see there's a number of post-it notes on there. That's fantastic. We will make sure we capture all of that before we go. And thank you also very much to the people who have contributed online. It's been really easy to see the comments that have been made online. We've just commented on some really good suggestions about training for staff in terms of health and well-being. I saw an interesting one about a PEEP for a disabled student being mandatory and about students refusing to have that PEEP and how that is dealt with within the code. I think that's a really interesting one and something we've been dealing with recently at Edge Hill, and I think we have to consider risk assessments for those students, but if we don't consider there to be a risk, then absolutely it makes sense that they shouldn't have to, students shouldn't be forced to have that done if they don't need to, as long as the risk is manageable. So thank you ever so much for all of your feedback on those. I'm not going to feedback on everything because we only have an hour today, and I want to make sure we get on to the next bit of the workshop. So I am going to ask my colleague to move us back into the presentation. If you can, that's fantastic. So quick, thank you very much. So this is the next section of the workshop today. So we're looking at new areas or enhancements for the code. And again, for those of you tuning in online, I have got a version of this that you hopefully will be able to use, but let me explain it to the people in the room first, and then I will come back to you. So this is about the areas of the code that you think actually need a lot of work, need some enhancement, need things to be added. So in terms of how to think about that, what should students be able to expect from providers in 2022? I bet when you look at areas of the code and you think about what you actually do in your accommodation now, you're probably doing things that are well above and beyond the minimum standards in the code, and it'd be really good to be capturing those things and making those part of the code going forward, raising standards across the sector. Think about whether those things you believe should be mandatory or advisory. And also, it would be really good if you can think about what the challenges might be for the sector in achieving those code requirements, and also what the challenges might be for auditors in terms of being able to evidence it. So there's no point us putting something in the code that the auditors can't find or evidence. So we need to consider, is that something that can be evidenced, and how easy might that be, and how would we do that? And I'm suggesting, since you're not sat on tables, so it's a bit more difficult to do that, I'm suggesting for those of you in the room that you just come and grab. So I've put on these bits of flip chart paper a particular area of the code that you might want to focus on. So this one is sustainability and environment. There are a number of others. To be honest, you can do it on whatever you like, but these were to give you some suggestions. If as a group of 2 or 3 you'd like to come up and grab one of these pieces of flip chart paper, find somewhere and a pen and find somewhere to scribble down your thoughts, have a proper discussion about this area and how you might think this might change within the code. Does that make sense? Fab, thank you. I'll let you come up and grab any that you fancy. And for those of you who are tuning in online, if I could ask my colleague to move onto the third Mentimeter presentation, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much. So the third part of this workshop, there's a new code again. So for the third section, another code at the top of this slide here. I can't see it from this. Oh, here we go. So go back to menti.com. 35872619. The challenge for you guys, if you're sat on your own at a computer, is that you don't have anyone to discuss this with, and the system isn't completely able to allow you to scroll through all of these. But the questions for you are, should the areas listed, so I've put a number of different topic areas, on the system. Should they be added to the code, enhanced within the code? What should students be able to expect from providers? Should it be mandatory or advisory? And what are the challenges for achieving the new code requirements, both for universities and for auditors? And what evidence might they look for? And then if we can move on to the next slide. Thank you. So these are the areas, these are the topic areas that the people in the room hopefully will be discussing and have picked. So you can pick the same ones. So just bear in mind that these ones will come up as you scroll through the online form: health and well-being, network connection, Wi-Fi, customer service expectations, induction of students, behaviour and discipline, occupant satisfaction, marketing prior to letting, staff presence and student care, and staff accessing student spaces. So if you could move on to the next slide, please. So you can put any comments you like into the box that comes up about that particular topic area, and then you can press submit, and I think you can comment on that topic as many times as you like. And you can also press submit without anything in the box, and it will move you on to the next topic. The unfortunate thing about your system is, unfortunately, you can't go back to previous questions. So it will list them all in order, and you won't be able to go back once you've passed on. So I'm sorry, that's just the way that the system works. But hopefully it will give you the ability to comment on each of the sections as you want. And we'll move on to the next slide, and hopefully, as a result, you should be able to anyway now start to comment, and you should be able to move the slides through of your own accord. They won't necessarily move in our vision, but you should all be able to move through the slides and be able to submit comments. Please give us a shout on the Q&A if you have any problems. Try this one.
It is important to them and to arrange for weekend access. Because we generally work Monday to Friday and with contractors. So I can see the need from the students' side, but yeah, or like at reasonable times.
obviously, given there's not many people, you can obviously feel free to use any of the, move on to a different one if you want to do a bit on each rather than in depth.
I was thinking about the Wi-Fi.
Oh, yeah.
Because in our case, for example, we don't, they just have access to EduRoam.
Oh, yes. Same with us.
How many institutions actually have separate? Because even our partners in privately managed accommodation, they sort of say you get an account with ask for or
Okay, yeah.
but in that case then they have no control over the service.
Yes, yeah. It's a good point, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's a very important one for students.
It is, isn't it? Hugely.
But maybe
Yeah, go for it. Scribble away.
I'm loving this online one.
Made it work, I think.
You have.
In fact, I think we need to nominate you to do everyone.
Well, this is it, yeah.
It's the problem,
you've
isn't
set
it?
a very
Set a
high
standard.
bar. Yeah.
I like the fact that we've got so many people online.
Yeah, it's good. I can see at least one person's commented online. That's a good sign.
Could be more.
Oh, thanks. Oh, that's good. I'm glad at least it's working. That's the main thing. I don't think we can see these ones online, unfortunately. I think I've set it up in a different way. It would have been better, maybe.
Oh, we've got the financials from meeting as well.
Oh, good. Oh, well done.
It's all looking healthy.
Thanks.
I think we're going to start getting them quarterly from now on, which will be fine. Eventually she'll get to the stage where she starts giving interviews.
Wow, brilliant. Ah, Flora, I've realised you must work with Rocky at Goldsmith. Have we met before? I'm trying to think whether we might have done. At something in the past.
We
but-
might have, yeah.
Yeah.
He's away at the moment.
Oh, he went to America again.
Yeah.
Texas, was it? Yeah, yeah, of course.
So jealous.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking earlier with them, some of the conversations that for us is so much easier because in terms of data sharing, because we're under support services.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah,
it the
it
same
makes a big
as-
difference. No, it isn't actually. We used to have it at Edge Hill under support services, recently moved to facilities management, so yeah, it's
I was worried that with our restructure that might happen, that we might go back on the facilities. But every day there's reminders of how it's a different relationship that the states have.
yeah, it is, isn't it?
There's now so many things that are coming up, the concerns over the power supply, outages maybe, and their estates are just like
Very
it's just the way-
practical.
yeah.
Everyone else is having to deal with it at home, so yeah.
The
of course.
impacts on the students and the notice we need to give them. We have so many more students that need just that time to adapt to the
Yeah, of
idea.
course. Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? Oh, well, thank you for coming along to this.
No, it's always really interesting.
I was going to say, feel free to grab another one if you want a different topic area.
notice at the moment, don't we? But we don't have to
Yeah.
demonstrate rules of protocol.
It does feel like it's open to abuse a little bit, doesn't it, with just the current...
Well, my estate's going to get sick of them.
Yeah, it's somebody's home, isn't it? And they don't treat it like somebody's home.
You know, if the Legionella testing isn't done today, then this is, well, maybe you should have given me 7 days
Thought about that.
notice then.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, sorry, didn't realise you were.
Yeah.
It's the girl steps out of the shower.
Yeah, and just wandering into the kitchens and things, shared spaces, just because they don't worry too much about that. And
Making a cheeky cup of tea.
yeah, that's even worse, isn't it? Yeah.
I think that definitely.
God, it's nearly 20 past.
At the moment, it's for access to bedrooms, isn't it?
Going to give everyone just a last minute before we do a little bit of feedback. Good question. Thank you. It's all right. No, this is very short, isn't it? I'll let everybody finish their frantic scribbling over there. Good idea. Okay, well, I'll ask my friendly colleague in the AV room to move back to our presentation. Thank you very much. So, we've just got 10 minutes of the session left, so I'm just going to ask, if you can remember, you might need to come up and have a look at the papers. It doesn't need to be a specific number, but would people like to give us some feedback about what area they looked at and what they discussed? And if you do, we will use the roving mic so that people can hear you back at home. Anyone willing to give us? Thank you.
I wasn't going to volunteer.
You've been volunteered. I'm sure it will be working. Do we?
Need that for the online people, so
Yes, if possible. I think it will probably come on. Unless it's turned off.
No. You can maybe go. I can. Shall I start? Shall I mind?
Yeah, should we try?
How do you want it?
See if there's any. I don't know whether the, in fact, maybe my colleague in the AV room can turn on one of our roving mics. Is that one on? Thank you. It's because I didn't say it over the speaker. Yeah, perfect.
And
Thank
so that
you.
was what I was
Thank
thinking.
You.
They don't know what they've missed on like that. No. Yeah, but only we know. Thank you. No, our group, that was Andy and myself, then Andy stopped me writing because we were chatting about it. Student induction, and the idea was ties in with something I put up there. Throughout the code, there are sections which say information must be provided on X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
So this isn't that these things should change, but I think these things should be collated so that there's an easy... I feel this has already been said, hasn't it?
No, we'll carry on, not to
and
everyone.
then I think an e-induction or whatever the induction module is ought to at least cover all of those things. Obviously, any induction will have the local flavouring that they naturally have.
Yeah.
I suspect most people's inductions do already cover these things, but having them would also make it, I think, easier for auditors, because it's a point of reference. The code says we must do this. We can evidence that our induction does it. This is, and then, as Andy was suggesting, it could be, as well as that, perhaps meeting the mandatory element, also allows auditors to suggest the way you can improve upon that. Well, yes, you have provided that information, but this might be a better way to do it, or this might be whatever.
Fantastic. Sounds like a great idea.
Does that
Thank you
make
very
sense?
much. Yeah, thank you, Paul. That's brilliant. Thanks, Robin.
So under health and well-being, so added in, so the code covers accommodation managed by HEIs. What I'm suggesting is that managed is broadened out for those HEIs who may have their own actual sort of on-site managed accommodation and the nominations that they manage, because they are managing nominations. They'll have, they'll have nomination agreements in place, contracts which they will be managing. So for me, it falls under managed, and there should be a minimum requirement for an HEI to be providing that nomination partner with the essential HEI's welbeing, welfare services, including out of hours, so that nominations partner knows who to contact in the event of an incident with the HEI student. And then additionally to that, that would be, I proposed, I think that should be mandatory. And then there's an additional bringing in the work that Edward Peck was talking about this morning, bringing that in as well under that section around information and data sharing. And hopefully the guidance that Edward will be bringing forward will be very clear and useful for HEIs to be able to implement similar data sharing agreements of whatever. Obviously, I don't know what he's going to be proposing, but I'm preempting that it will be clear and satisfactory. And using that could possibly form some kind of an appendix to, as guidance, and allowing HEIs to be able to follow that to ensure that whatever they're putting in place is ICO and GDPR compliant. And I think that should be a advisory for the first term to allow HEIs to catch up and build on that, and then possibly in the next term, after the next review, become a mandatory.
Fabulous. Thank you, Robin. That's great. Do you want to say something, Emma? Yeah? I will keep it to a minute, if that's all right, yeah?
So just thinking of, without wanting to take the code too far away from, obviously, its original intended purpose, which was in lieu of HMO licensing, I think there is something for us to think about in terms of accommodation 2022 and onwards around how it aligns with other priorities like things like Suicide Safer, and that might be through design, how things are designed within a building, window restrictions on upper floors, just those types of things. Absolutely. And how the accommodation plays into those types of agendas.
Fabulous, that's a really good idea. Thank you, Emma. Fantastic. Well, I am going to finish it there because we have probably another session coming straight in after this rather than a break, so I will move on. Just to tell you, thank you ever so much for all your contributions today. It is going to be very useful to us in our review of the code. Just wanted to finally say what we have planned for the next steps, which is that you will have further opportunities to feed into this process. We will be consulting with members much further on our review of the code after this, and we'll also be consulting with other stakeholders, including auditors, and we talked about auditors a bit earlier in the process because they are obviously a very key stakeholder and partner for us working on this going forward. So if you do have further ideas on the train home or in your day jobs as you go back into work, please do note those down, and we will be back in touch about ways to feed into the code review going forward. Only thing left for me to say, I think, is thank you ever so much for engaging in the session today. Thank you for making sure that we were able to make the code as useful for members as it can be in 2022. And I will see you again soon. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Very good.